Welcome in. It's time once again for Your Life Matters with clinical social worker Dr. Beth Plachetka from Safe Harbor Counseling and Dr. Beth Speaks and Dr. Plachetka. Thanks again for joining us. How are we doing today?
Really good, Mike. How are you?
Doing good. Kids are probably excited. This time of year, they're out of school or just about to be out of school, and we're going to focus on a topic that's still kind of honing in on schools. We don't want them to forget about it just yet. We kind of have some different things to go over with as far as schools are concerned. What do we have on today's show?
Well, I think what I really want to clarify for everybody, and I think it's a universal time, it can apply to anybody, even though school is ending right at this moment, is like what the purpose of schools really is. I've literally spent all but 5 years of my life in schools. I've either been a student or a teacher or a school social worker, and I come from a family that has teachers in it, so I continue to hear more stories. And what I know is not everyone knows what goes on in schools and the purpose of what happens when teachers do or say certain things. I learned it from my teachers, my students, my parents, my own kids. The interesting thing, I think, is because everyone has gone to school and they've had that experience, it feels like, I know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. When they correct somebody or they scold somebody or they say a certain thing. But what we don't know is really the purpose behind it. We remember the feelings we had when we were with our teachers, but not necessarily the extenuating circumstances that they're not going to share or the administration wouldn't share. Schools deal with the human product. I often think about, how they're talking about putting outcomes, the student test results, as part of the teacher evaluation. And of course, that would be appropriate. But sometimes kids bring things that are really tough to school, and the teacher can't change them. You can have breakfast, they can have support, but sometimes if dad is sick or the dog has just died, it's really hard for them to learn.
Sure.
What we know is kids learn best by relationship, not technology, relationship. Mike, maybe you saw this thing online, but the Silicon Valley parents, they send their kids to schools that don't use technology. We're saying more and more, and they're saying less.
Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm. So what kids really need is a safe, structured environment so that they can learn what I call successful student behaviors. Now I have a list of a million of them, but what it really gets down to is the ability to hold still, take in information, which means focused and attend, produce work, turn it in, which means accept authority and follow directions. Now, that sounds easy to some kids, but for many kids, it's very hard these days. So when they come to school, they have to even learn those things before they can progress in what they're actually tested on, which is reading, writing, and math. We're seeing lots of students with anxiety. Schools are providing not only breakfast, but sometimes mental health support, which is very difficult for kids in a large group setting. So I think what's really important to know is that teachers are, by law, there's a Latin phrase, which I cannot say, that they act in the absence of parents to provide safety and protection and instruct. They use the curriculum to teach those successful student behaviors that they're going to apply in life. Give you an example. The IRS wants your stuff on time. So producing something on time is something we want to learn. Police officers want you to accept their authority and stop at the stop sign.
Yes.
Those are things that are
big ones.
Big ones. So when sometimes parents are going to think, oh my goodness, is my child ready? And what does the teacher need from me? And those are the things we want to be practicing at home with simple things that actually you can do at home. So if the curfew for your 15-year-old is 10 o'clock and they're going to get a ride home for their friend, it's 10 o'clock unless they've done whatever you've said they need to do. That's not mean. That's helping them learn the parameters. If they need to be somewhere on time, they need to be there on time. That's not mean. It's helping with the parameters. So what we really also know is that sometimes in the relationship with the teacher, kids really learn a lot about themselves. And with some changes, this is a true story. There was a high school student who really had grown a lot in high school, had difficulty turning things on time, following direction, but really